place that I show the camera on now. I have a slight, I'd like to open the windows or the blinds, but it'll make my face really dark. So I'll start in about 4 minutes and you're in the right place. So welcome to the anxiety webinar. Back in a sec. Alright, everyone, we're going to get going in just a minute. So welcome. Yeah, so funny to be running an anxiety webinar and to be getting anxious beforehand, right? That's a little bit funny. I'm just going to drink a sip of water. You've got about a minute or two. If you want to grab a cup of tea or some water, we're going to be together for about 1 hour. And I will open up the phone lines and text lines in about 20 minutes to half an hour. So go grab some water, grab some tea, and join me in about a minute. All right, welcome back, guys. So 6 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. We're going to be teaching anxiety tonight, an introduction to anxiety. I hope you guys had a wonderful, wonderful Sunday. It was a gorgeous weekend here in the Lower Mainland. I know a lot of people watching are in this area. I've got people literally all over the globe who are watching this. So wherever you were, I hope it was beautiful. And I hope you had a great Sunday. Yeah, why not? Great Sunday. So those of you who are watching live will get an opportunity to watch this again and again and again. Those of you who are watching the replay will have the same thing, but I'm only going to keep this link up for about a week or so, and I'll explain that all before we finish. Tonight, what we're going to do is I'm going to spend about an hour with you. And all of my workshops, even if I'm teaching a camera and a lamp, are entirely interactive. What that means is in about half an hour to 40 minutes, at the time that feels right, I will open up my business cell number, I'll give it to you, and I'll invite you to either phone in with questions or text in with questions. Please don't email or type me in questions because I can't do that at the same time. But because my phone is very portable, you can text in questions or phone in. Now, if you do listen to the replay, I apologize, I won't be able to address the questions, but I'm hoping that all of your questions are addressed during the 1 hour live tonight. So welcome. Tonight we're going to spend an hour introducing the concept of anxiety, healing it from the mind, body, spirit angle. I'm first going to spend a few minutes telling you a bit about me. Some of you who are watching have seen me speak before, been to some of my workshops, and if that's you, put your feet up, go get another cup of tea, look out the window, or re-listen to my introduction. So my name is Dr. Divi. I'm trained as a family doctor. I'm also trained as a mind, body, spirit practitioner. I'm also trained as a medical intuitive. I spent years and years and years in the medical model. It's been 21 years now, or 22 years coming up. And I really do enjoy being a doctor. What I always loved about medicine has been the interactions with people, getting to know people over a short period of time or a long period of time, building relationships with people's families, communities. I really do enjoy that, like my heart opens to that. What I also really enjoyed about Western medicine was even helping one person a little bit. And I really do enjoy, or have enjoyed in the past, being a physician. I now have worked or branched off into mind, body, spirit medicine for one reason and one reason only. The main reason I have branched out is because it is more encompassing. To me, on my own reflection, it has more of an ability to heal. And from my angle as well, it is more welcoming and teaching the client or the patient how to do it for themselves so that you're not reliant on me. I got into this work literally not by accident, but I stumbled into it from my own illnesses and injuries, like a lot of us do. I graduated medical school when I was 25, and I was sick when I was 28. And it happened like that. It felt like it happened like that, but it was really gradual. A little bit here and a little bit there. And before I knew it, it was like a compound of things, almost like Tower of Pisa that had come on my head. So again, it started with little things, like a little bit of pain here, a little bit of neck pain here. And when things really started to stumble into getting worse, I was having premenstrual syndrome, like mood swings. I was having food allergies, hives, bladder infections, yeast infections, even what some people would call borderline depression. And I was self-medicating with over-the-counter medications for the pain and antihistamines and all kinds of stuff. And I was really hitting a tipping point where, you're running through a huge bottle of Advil every couple of weeks, you start to question it. Running through a bottle of wine every other day, you start to question it. And when coffee is becoming your best friend, you start to question it. I only started to question it when my mood started to really swing, so I do know the impact of having a mood that goes like this. And prior to not too long ago, I never would have classified myself as an anxious person. But as I started to do this work, I started to really understand my emotions. After my illnesses developed, I chose not to go down the Western medical route, not because anything's wrong with that, but simply because I wanted to find a way inside myself to feel better. Because there was a part of me somewhere in my head that knew that 3 years ago, 7 years ago, I was feeling fine. So because I was already a doctor, I knew that there was very little that the medical model could help me with. So I didn't actually spend a lot of time on that path. So I really aggressively searched out alternatives. And that included everything from yoga to some meditation, which I hated back then, to acupuncture and chiropractor, massage and physio. And we are talking about 16, 17 years ago now, which back then was very, very avant-garde to go see a chiropractor. And those things would always help a little bit for the pain, a little bit for the mood, a little bit for the hives, but it was always coming back. To make a really long story short, I basically went on a self-healing journey and discovered that my emotions were a huge underlying pinning of why I wasn't doing so well. And as I started to unlayer those emotions, I actually started to heal, both physically and mentally and emotionally. I'll never say that those 14, 15 years were a walk in the park, and it didn't take 14 years to get rid of the pain. But it did take a soul-searching path. But I will tell you this much, that that soul-searching path has made me into a much, much happier and robust individual than I was back then. I was always outgoing, I was always optimistic, but now I can actually say to you, I'm truly happy within. And that was something I didn't have back then. And that was what a lot of this journey has taken me on. So I hope through the hour that we're together tonight that I can impart some of that to you, and I'm hoping that you'll join me afterwards. So before we end, I will tell you, I will make you some unbelievable offers as to how to take this work further, but that's not till the end. If you actually use your scroll button, you can probably scroll down your page and see them. So let's just jump though into the heart of this work. So now what I do is I teach mind, body, spirit workshops. I'm actually in the process of opening a college for this work. I've overlapped both Western medicine and this type of medicine for the last 4 or 5 years, and I have literally seen outstanding results. I have clients who say to me almost every day that you've changed my life. I'm a happier person. I wish I met you 20 years ago. I get emails from people that I saw once that say things like, literally that hour changed them completely. So the work I do is much different than Family Doctor. The work that I do now is really all-encompassing. It's all about self-healing, self-wellness, and searching inside, but also healing inside. So that's my focus of my work now. And if you're joining me for a 1-hour webinar on anxiety, I bet you've got some of that. So sometimes when I teach my webinars, I set up a flip chart, but I decided not to do that when I realized I couldn't get the fresh light in here. Because with the fresh light, I get really dark and can't see me. So it would have been too clustering to have that flip chart. So I'm going to use my hands a little bit, and I'll ask you to kind of keep along with me. So for those of you who are joining me for the first time, never been to my webinars before, I have taught this information on and off for 4 or 5, or actually longer years if you include my yoga days. So I've literally been teaching for about 15 years. And I teach entirely what's called intuitively, meaning I'm feeling the audience that's out there watching, and I'm feeling what that audience would gather the most from. So occasionally I will stop, I might even close my eyes, I'll take a few breaths, and then I'll speak again, because that will give me an idea of what's happening. To some degree, everybody does this. When they stop and they breathe and they kind of go inside and get a gut feeling, everybody does that. I just do it professionally. I just do it with all of my work. So let's start with this. Usually when I teach my webinars, I try to summarize it all down into like an acronym. And so the acronym I came up for tonight with was DENTA, or DENTA. There's Denta sticks, you can get dogs. I have a beautiful chocolate lab and she loves these Denta sticks. So this acronym is like perfect. So DENTA, and I'll tell you what each of those letters represent. For those of you who think kind of more left-brained, you may want to write this down. Like I said, I usually have a flip chart, but with the sunlight it would not have worked. So D stands for define. So first thing we're going to start off with in a few minutes is to define anxiety. Kind of makes sense. The E is to talk about the effects and what the emotion really is. And so we're going to talk about what emotions are, the effect of anxiety on people's lives, and really go into a deeper definition from the mind, body, spirit angle of what an emotion is. N is to define our natural state. T is to talk about the tools and techniques that we can use to shift. A is to arrive into a place that feels easy. So DENTA. And through the course of the hour, I will do my best to hit on D and E, and a little bit on N, a little bit on T, and a little bit on A. And if you decide to take this work further with me, I will literally plunge into all of them if you come and work with me further in the 4-hour work or the weekend work. So let's first define anxiety. If you have signed up for this workshop, you probably know what anxiety is. Anxiety is typically that if this is the mind, and we look at a timeline, I'm actually going to get a pen so you can see this. Here's the timeline, okay? And if this is past, this is present, and this is future. Past is the mind going here, present is the mind right now, and future is what's coming up in a minute, 5 minutes, 10 seconds, or whatever. In mind, body, spirit medicine, we say that depression is the past, now is the now, anxiety is the future. So what it is the mind has a habit of running into the future. Now a lot of people have a mixture of depression and anxiety, and perhaps that's you. So, and a lot of people do. But typically some people find that they tend to have more anxious trait or more depressive traits. But they actually do go a lot in hand. But the cardinal thing with either depression or anxiety is the mind is actually not so much in the now. So part of my Sunday today was actually, some of you met me on Global TV this morning, so I did a 6-minute stint on Global TV talking about, what did I talk about? I talked about summer and routines with children, though I think I only talked about that for about a minute before a bunch of other questions came in. So I did Global TV this morning, and then shortly after that I had to meet some family that was in town, and then shortly after that I was at the pool with my son, and then shortly after that I was in Stanley Park with my son and husband for ice cream. It was a really, really fun day. And what I found about today was, because everything was very much focused like that, it was very easy to keep my mind in the now. As soon as I start to think of, oh gosh, I've got a webinar tonight at 6 o'clock, I'd be like, oh my God, that's coming up, oh my God. And when I was out for ice cream right before I came home, my husband said, what time do you need to get home? And I said, oh, about 5 o'clock, I'll be able to set up the computer. I have to do a whole bunch of stuff on the back page, as you can see from the page you're on. And I always forget how long these things take me to do. So it's 5:20 and I'm like, Ed, who's my husband, could you come in and set up my camera for me? Because I'm still working on the back page. And I could feel my anxiety rising. So anxiety is the mind's racing into the future. And in my case, about an hour ago or so now, about an hour ago, I was thinking, I'm not going to get this done, even though I knew I would. And I had half an hour leeway after I had my little, like, oh my God, right? So it's a habitual thing. A lot of us are actually trained to think into the future. And the reason I talked about going to the pool in the park is because traditionally that's where children will hang out. And if you observe children, their minds tend to be more in the right now, like this present moment. What's happening right now? As are our four-legged creatures, as are our babies, and as are a lot of older people when their mind starts to get slower. So it is actually more natural, I know it sounds weird, for us to be more in the now. Because if you think about how you were born, we're all babies at one point. When we are born, and I used to do deliveries as part of my career, I didn't ever deliver an anxious baby. They all came out crying usually, with 2 arms and 2 legs and a few little wails and some blood and some mucus, but man, they were cute. And they were always present moment creatures, right here, right now. That's how babies and children are. Now, as children get older, their mind tends to run very much into the future or into the past, depending on how they're trained. So anxiety, by definition, is the mind running forward, anticipating what if, oh my God, when, oh my God, when is this going to happen? So it takes us away from the right now. And that's just training. So if you think of this as your brain, and think of it how I often teach it on my weekends, if you look at each knuckle that I've got here, each knuckle is like a ski hill. For those of us who are local to Vancouver, you can think of it like up at Whistler, say this is Seventh Heaven, and say this is Magic Express. It's been years since I've skied, so I don't remember the names of the runs. The Green Run. So each of these are trails. And you can imagine that each trail is like an emotion. So once you point your skis down a certain trail, you start to pick up some speed. And if we're really trained to go down the anxiety pathway since we were younger, it's like a neural pathway from our brain into our body. So we just immediately knee-jerk respond that way. It's like our body and our mind are so linked that as soon as we start to get a bit nervous about something, a lot of you can relate to starting to perspire a bit, stomach gets upset, your eyes might dilate, because your body and your brain are so connected. As soon as you think an anxious thought, you start to trigger the anxious pathway and your body immediately almost constricts. So the body and mind are so connected. And from a young age, those neural pathways are formed. So we've defined what anxiety is, and we've also shown you that we have these neural pathways that literally take the brain into the body, or what people call the mind into the body. But these neural pathways are learned, right? Fear, anxiety, anger, resentment, hatred, blame. If you meet certain people, they all respond in slightly different ways because they're trained in different ways. So anxiety is a learned response. So that's to define anxiety. The next step is we're going to actually spend a few minutes talking about the effects of anxiety on the body. So this is the E part. So D was to define. E is the effects of anxiety. So we're going to talk about the effects of anxiety, and we're also going to talk about what emotions are from the mind-body medicine point of view. So I'm just going to make sure that no one has texted because I just heard my phone beep, so just bear with me for a sec. Some people know my number, so somebody might be calling in early when you're not supposed to call in this early. I love you guys so much. So, no, my mistake. So, D is to define anxiety, which you've already done. E is for what emotions are, and the effects of anxiety. So, let's talk about what the effects of anxiety are. I already kind of alluded to it, but I'll go through it in more detail. So, when we trigger the mind into anxiety, what automatically happens to the body, and it's basically a primitive response from what we think is called our reptilian brain of our body, that is hereditary. It's passed down evolutionary-wise, that we have what's called a fight or flight system in our body. That fight or flight system in our body is so important. It keeps us alive. It keeps us out of trouble. If we are an animal in the wild, we would save ourselves, hopefully. And even as a human, it's super important. So, for example, imagine your kid, is running into a bit of danger. You want your body to go into a natural state of fight or flight. So imagine your kid is running across the road. There's not any cars coming, but there's bikes, and your kid's 3 years old. You want your body to go into a response and run and get your kid, correct? That's this fight or flight. Your body instantly, when it has a feeling of anxiety or fear, your body catapults. You don't need to think about it. You don't need to like pump a device to get your muscles to get stronger. Because what happens in the body is adrenaline and epinephrine are released like that. And as soon as the adrenaline and epinephrine are released, your body goes into fight or flight. And physiologically what happens, this is really important to the effects, your blood pressure goes up, your heart rate goes up, your breathing rate goes up, your eyes will dilate, you might even start to sweat a bit, you might feel a bit nauseous because you get less blood to your stomach, you actually get less blood to your immune system, and you get less blood to your female and male kind of private organs. I always joke because you don't need to fight a cold and you don't need to have an orgasm when you're running across the road, correct? But you do need your legs to move to get your kid. You do need to see well to go see where you're going. So this is a natural state of what happens when you go into fear. So it's really important to know that your muscles literally contract. And for a lot of people who are watching tonight, again, I'm tuning in, a lot of people who are watching tonight, some of you have some degree of chronic pain. Others of you have some chronic stomach problems. And if you rewind and re-listen to what I just said, you'll understand. When we're in fight or flight or fear, less blood goes to your stomach, right? So you can't digest. You're going to have maybe stomach problems. And then another thing I said was a lot of people have pain. And one of the reasons for the pain is the muscles contract, and that emotion gets stuck in the fascia of the body or the connective tissue, and then that creates pain. So this is the physiological response of the body to anxiety. Now when I'm talking about the anxiety that I'm describing the body, that also happens though when we have things like anger or resentment or sadness, overwhelmment. All of those things can get stuck in the body. So anxiety literally throws your body into response. So that's the effect. So D, we defined anxiety. E was to talk about the effect of the anxiety on a physical level. And the second E I was going to talk about right now is defining what an emotion is from the mind, body, spirit angle. Now, in my opinion, what I'm about to teach you right now is probably the most important part of the work that I teach. And even if you've heard this definition 3,000 times, hearing it 3,001 times, it'll solidify it that much more. So in Western medicine, we put little or no emphasis at all on emotions. Why? We just don't. We put emotions on the back burner. And we look at the body as a physical entity, like bones and muscles that are stuck together. So when I was in medical school and I was out practicing, I used to always think that it was like a robot that we would put Lego pieces into and make the arms move, make the head move, make the legs move. And then when I got seeing patients, I realized we're not Lego. We're humans. We're people with thoughts and with feelings. And how I grew up personally was I grew up in a family where we did not do feelings. We did not do emotions, and that may be some of you. Some of my family members did anxiety, and some of my family members did anger, but we were trained to not do them at all. So for me, when I started this work, it was like a whole catapult of emotions. One of my clients really beautifully emailed me today saying, "Is it normal, Divi, that when you start doing some of this work, things go a bit crazy?" And I said, I haven't actually emailed her back. My answer is yes. One of the reasons is, I'm going to actually make this statement, which is actually quite important before I get into definitions. If I could hit pause in your life right now, some of you are 40, some of you are 30, some of you are 20, some of you are 80 who are watching. You know people who are older than you, maybe your siblings, maybe your parents, and you can see what's happening to their life. Oh yeah, that's happening, and then that's happening, and then that's happening. And you can look at your life right now, say at 30, 35, and you can look back at the last 30, 34 years and go, okay, yeah, I see all those things. Got it? Got it? And then if you do absolutely nothing, chances are you can almost see what's going to happen next, right? And you normally wouldn't tune into an event like this unless what you see coming forward doesn't feel so good, right? So at first when you start this work, at first it's like a pressure cooker bubbling a bit, because for years we've either ignored them or we haven't given them any kudos. So as you move forward in this work, stuff is going to bubble a bit. But I guarantee you, if you stick with it, it starts to get better and better and better. How long? It can take a few weeks or a few months, depending on how new you are at this. But I can guarantee you that if you stick with it, in a few weeks or a few months, things really do go much, much better. How long that takes is up to you. It's how quickly or slowly you want to work with the stuff, right? So, going back, D was to define anxiety, which you already did. E was to talk about the effects of anxiety, which we did. And now the second E I was going to define is what emotions are by the mind-body medicine terminology. Emotions have a lot of different definitions to them. Some people say emotions are like a feeling that's coming through your body. Other people say emotions are energy that's actually moving through your body, so energy in motion. So I'm going to use those definitions. I'm going to add a third definition from the mind, body, spirit angle. And again, if you just remember one thing, this would be the most important thing to remember. How we define emotions in my work is simply this. We have two voices inside of us. One that we call the mind's voice that thinks all the time. Then we have a second voice that we call the spirit voice. I'm showing my hands like this, but just to show you that comes in different spaces. The mind that goes chitter chatter, chatter chitter, chitter chatter, chatter chitter, 40, 60, 70,000 thoughts a day, nonstop, correct? Then we have a second voice. And that's the word that I call it is your source voice. Also known as your inner being's voice. Also called your non-physical voice. So when you start working with me, I will tell you this much. Number one, there's nothing religious at all about my work. Number two, I define things as spirit as the non-physical part of us. And almost everybody out there believes in it. You know, a baby comes into the world, we say, oh, what an old soul, I think I've seen this soul before. And then the person dies or croaks, has a transition experience and what we call leaves the planet. Almost everybody says, oh, I'm sorry to see you go, Joe, but you're in a better place, right? So people say that all the time. And the reason people say that is because there's a belief that the spirit lives on. And the spirit that we call non-physical comes into this body and something happens to it afterwards, correct? So that's what I'm going to define as the spirit voice. I'm going to give a few more definitions to spirit. Spirit voice is the non-physical part of you that loves you unconditionally, that adores you, and has always got your back. Source lives in a place of freedom and ease and love and well-being and joy. And you're probably scratching your head thinking, what? Think of kids. Think of children. Think of babies. Those little buggers, those kids, those children, those babies, They're happy. So happy. That's because their spirit voice is so loud. So loud. So we have these two voices, the mind and the spirit. And they both clickety-clack, 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 go 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. How you know you've got a spirit voice in you is by virtue of the fact that you have emotions. Most people, when they're being introduced to this concept, I will first tell them that yes, you have a source voice. It's the part of you that speaks to you in the way of gut feelings. It's like an inner knowing. It's the intuition. You've all had it. You walk into a party, you look around, you feel it. You don't even necessarily look at the people that are there. You just feel, yeah, this is a party for me, or I don't know, the bag of Doritos and that movie at home looks better, right? That's a feeling, just like a gut feeling. Or when you're standing in line at Costco and you're like, which line should I go into? Hopefully you could listen to your gut feeling and you go into one of the lines, right? That's your gut feeling or your inner voice, which I term your spirit voice or your source voice. Now again, for many of my clients starting this work, that is brand new, brand new. And it can take a few weeks or a few months to start to wake that up. But the more you immerse yourself in this work, the more you practice, the more you play, the more you do this dance with me, the more it makes sense, okay? So now, with the mind in place and the spirit in place, those two voices in place, now the most important concept. Emotions are here to tell us one thing and one thing only. Is my mind, in this moment, the way I'm thinking about whatever, overlap with how my spirit voice is thinking or not? So let me give you an example. Imagine you're thinking of your little baby, or your little puppy, or your kitten. Something that you deeply adore. When you look at that entity, the baby, or the dog, or the cat, you most likely feel this emotion of bliss and joy, as long as the dog pooped outside, right? So this is because the mind, when it focuses on this child, or this dog, or this cat, thinks thought purely of well-being. And the feeling as a result is love. Because your inner being agrees with you. So if you think of it as two voices, here's your mind and here's your source. When the mind and inner being overlap and have the same opinion about a topic, then the emotion is joy and freedom and love. And because the inner being will always hold that vantage point for you, no matter what, your inner being agrees with you, always. The inner being knows this does not have to be hard. Your inner being knows it can serve you. Your inner being knows how incredible you are. Your inner being knows of your magnificence. As soon as your mind deviates from that thinking of what your inner being is, then the emotion is fear, or anger, or jealousy, or blame, or resentment, or anxiety. So your emotion is here to tell you one thing and one thing only. What is your overlap between your mind and your inner being? So take a second and close your eyes and think about that for a second. And we're going to go right into meditation in just a second. So I want you to take in that concept. So many of my newer friends who are out there watching right now and listening and participating, that may have been a new concept for you, and I completely adore and welcome that. It can be a new concept. So, you know, right in about this point, I'm strongly sensing to do a really short 2 or 3 minute meditation and then jump right back into the topic. But I want that to just sit inside of you. So if you're driving, you will not be meditating. If you're walking and hiking in the grass ground right now, do not meditate with me. But for those of you sitting at home in front of your computer or maybe on your lounge chair, invite your eyes to close. If you have never meditated ever before, please do not be afraid. I have taught brand new beginners meditation. I at one point was a very beginner meditator. I hated the concept of meditating, just so you know. So as a teacher, I try to make it easy. So with your eyes closed, just start to breathe in and out. Inhale and exhale. Belly rises and belly falls. Inhale and exhale. Breathe in. Breathe out. Inhale and exhale. Keep breathing in and out through your nose, calm and relaxed. Invite your right hand onto your chest and your left hand onto your belly. And just notice which hand is moving more. As you breathe, just notice. More than likely, as you're sitting here, you'll notice, if you're a beginner, that your right hand is moving and your left hand is likely still. That is incredibly normal, especially as a beginner. So what I invite you to do right now is take your mental focus and think only of your left hand, your left palm. And breathe so that your left hand can lift and your left hand can fall. So that your belly can rise and that your belly can slow down and drop. Inhaling slowly, exhaling deeply. Breathe in, breathe out. Try to take about 5, 10, 15 more rounds of this breath. And think deeply about your left hand on your belly button. Think of how much more you can relax your belly. Think of how much you can relax your shoulders and your hips and your body into your chair. And now for the next few breaths, try to count your breathing. So take an exhale together and inhale for the count of 1, 2, 3. Exhale for 1, 2, 3, 4. Inhale for 1, 2, 3. Exhale for 1, 2, 3, 4. Keeping this low, slow flow of rhythm to your breath going, you just see what starts to happen to your body. Breathing in and out slowly and deeply and calmly. Just notice how your body feels. Let's just do another couple rounds of the meditation and then we'll come out of it. So still with your eyes closed, if you wish, relax your palms down onto your lap. Just try to focus on that deep belly breathing you were just doing. So the belly rises and the belly falls with great ease. So breathing in and breathing out. You will notice that the mind may wander. That's so normal, guys. That's so normal. And then with some practice and some patience, your mind will start to come back into the belly. Again, we're going to do the last cycle just with counting. Take an exhale together. Inhale for 1, 2, 3. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. Inhale, 1, 2, 3. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. Inhale, 1, 2, 3. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. Really good, guys, really good. Take a few more calmer and slower breaths. And notice how you're feeling. Whether you be an experienced meditator, meaning meditated for 20 years, or maybe you're brand new at this, we're always beginners. So gently start to bring your awareness back to your fingers and your toes. And you can move them gently in the air. Maybe even rub your lips together. And then slowly, when you're ready, invite your eyes to flicker open, knowing that your room you're in is brighter. Come back when you're ready. Really good work, guys, really good. So just take a step. And as you sit in your lounge chair or wherever you are, check into how you feel. Like I said, no matter if you're an experienced meditator or yogi or brand new, every time we try meditation, we practice, we're just trying. We never get it right, we never get it wrong. And hopefully you felt a little bit calmer, a little bit more at ease, and a little bit more relaxed. The more often you do that, what you actually are doing for your body is you're doing the counteraction of the physiological fight or flight. You're calming your mind down with your breath. You're calming your body down with your breath. And what that does is it does the opposite effect of fight or flight. So you're actually increasing what's called the parasympathetic nervous system, which relaxes the muscles. It gets you to breathe deeper, gets your eyes to relax, everything feels better. And that's what meditation is doing. So meditation is definitely one of the key tools that I use to teach people on it with anxiety, but now I hope you understand why. Because it actually stimulates the opposite of the fight or flight response to calm you down. So now that you're a little bit calmer, I know I'm calmer for sure. If I'm teaching meditation or doing it, it's like, woo, I could fall asleep. What I want you to understand is, in that calm space, what you've also done is I'd like you to think of it like a little water that you've just taken all the ripples out of and you've made very calm. You've given a chance for that source voice or inner being voice to get louder. And you also notice that in this space you're in right now, there's a little bit less anxiety, maybe a little bit less frustration or anger, and a greater sense of well-being or calm that's developed. And that's what just starts to happen as you start some of this work, is you actually start to feel better a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, a little bit. And that's the key to what I teach people. So let's go back to how we started this workshop. So we talked, if you just tuned in, I was saying that I'm going to teach the anxiety introduction as 5 steps. D-E-N-T-A. Denta, like the dog sticks, Denta sticks. So D was to define anxiety, so we spent some time on that. We defined what anxiety was, that the mind was running to the future. E was to talk about the effects, physiological effects, which we talked about, the body going to fight or flight. And the other E was to talk about what emotions are, about the overlap of the mind and the spirit voice. So we've done that too. The one thing that I have not mentioned, but I'd like to mention in terms of going back to the effect, is that most of us, believe it or don't, are in a chronic state of fight or flight. Our mind is thinking 5 minutes ahead. Our mind is worrying about the past. We're very little in right now. So the more that you do this work, the more it's easier. So with the mind running forward, we're all doing it, and it creates a chronic state of fight or flight. So D, define, E, effect, N is natural state of being. So let's spend a few minutes there. Then we're going to jump into tools and techniques. So N for natural. So this was a really brief one. And I alluded to this earlier. Most people find this hard to believe. But your natural state of being as a human is actually well-being. Your natural state is actually meant to be joy. Your natural state is actually meant to be freedom. Your natural state is actually meant to be appreciation. And it's so opposite to how we're trained. And normally when I start my workshops, I always draw a half circle. Some of you have seen it. And on one side I put kind of Western medicine, and on the opposite I put mind, body, spirit medicine. And what I always try to tell my clients is that when you start this work, it's like a complete 180-degree different belief system. So at first it's going to joggle your mind that, what? I meant to be empowered? What? I meant to be free? What? Life could be easy? But think of your children, think of babies, think of your animals. Your animals don't look at you, I hope they don't, and say, kiss me because I'm cute. They don't say that, they just expect you to. Some of you know I have a really beautiful chocolate lab whose name is JJ, and she never thinks, oh look, I did my hair right, do you love me? She never thinks that. She just says, hi Mom, I'm here. I'm JJ, do you love me? Of course you love me, give me a kiss. She never ever thinks she needs to do anything to get it. And as humans, we're out-trained from that. And that's one of the big things I teach people is how to retrain your mind to realize that you do count, you do matter. Freedom is your natural state of being. So that's N as a nutshell, but I could go on and on and on. And if you decide to do some more work with me, we will spend more time on N, because it does kind of jostle the mind to imagine that life could be easier as a whole. Because one thing I want to interject here is that when I'm working with any client on anything, whether it be anxiety or pain or fear or anger or a headache or recurrent herpes, as much as I'm working with that specific thing, really what I'm doing is I'm actually weaving my intuition, weaving my work into their life. That's really what I'm doing. And as I weave my work into their life, the areas of their life actually start to improve, and then their health and their well-being improves. So as much as you're here for an anxiety workshop, we can't leave the rest of the equations out. We can't leave your home life, your personal life, your sense of who you are. It's all intermixed. I'll just say one more thing before I jump to T. One of the biggest things that causes fear for people is that they believe that they're just not good enough and they just don't count. And nothing could be more true. Because if you think about it, how does it feel to think you don't matter? How does it feel? It feels awful. One of the reasons it feels awful, remember this that I talked about? It's because your inner being does not agree. Okay? Because there's no one more special than you. At all. No one. No one more special than you in your body, with your life story, with your history, with your family. No one, no one, no one. No one. Just like there's no one more special than me with what I've been through in my life. And so when we start to understand that we ourselves are the center of the universe, and we put our needs in front, that's really important. Remember, you put your oxygen mask on before you help your kids, right, on an airplane? So similarly, your feelings matter. So when I said one of the biggest things that most of us suffer from is a belief that we don't count, we don't matter, it's because that we're trained that way. So I'm going to say one more thing before I open the phone lines, and then I'll go into T. So here is the topic, my phone is the topic, and here is your mind, and here's your source voice. Here's your source going, I love you, you're wonderful, you're amazing, you're incredible. And as soon as you think the exact opposite, 180 degree opposite, completely opposite, 180 degree opposite. I don't matter, I don't count, I'm afraid about tomorrow, I don't know what's going to happen, oh my God. As soon as your mind thinks anything exactly the opposite, that is where fear comes in. Because fear, if you join my workshop on next Monday and Thursday, or come to one of my weekends, one of the first things I show you is what's called the emotional scale. It starts up here in joy and love and appreciation, 22 emotions in between, frustration, contentment, hope, anger, fear, rage, anger, and then all the way down to fear. So we go, fear and anxiety is here, guilt is down here, and joy is up here. So in my work, I'm literally using the scale over and over again so you can get an idea that fear is exactly opposite of your born truth, of love, of joy, of freedom, of empowerment. There's no one more special than you. So anytime you experience fear, anytime, again, if you remember just this one thing from tonight's workshop, fear is the thinking that you're doing, that thought you're having, your inner being standing back going, I don't agree. I don't know if you can see my full screen or not. If you can, you can see my mic and my thing here. But I literally am telling you guys that when you're thinking a thought of fear, your inner being is not agreeing. Your inner being knows your worth, knows how incredible you are, and is rooting you on in every single one of your life experiences with pure love and pure joy and pure empowerment. So that is how your inner being sees you. And when we feel fear, it's because the thought we're thinking in that moment, our inner being completely, 180 degrees opposite, does not agree. Got it? Pretty simple. So if you're watching live, you can either text me or phone into my business cell with a question. The business cell number is 778-668-4330. And feel free to text in or call in. If you call in, I just ask you to lower the volume of your speakers so that we don't get a rebound effect. But feel free to call in or text in a question. I'm going to turn my phone on so I can hear you. And if you call in, I'll weave in what I'm about to teach right now into your question. And if you don't call or text in, I'll just finish off the workshop. So let's talk about, so we did D, E, N. So D was to define, E was effects and defining what an emotion is, N is your natural state of being. T, I should say teething, right? Because dentist ticks now. T is tools and techniques. This is where the money is. This is the most important thing. This is how to take your mind, because see, I need to say something. I think I said this earlier. Your source voice or your inner boing voice is so smart. It knows how valuable you are. It knows the truth with a capital T of how, oh, beautiful, amazing, gorgeous, and smart you are. So that is who you truly are, what your inner being is saying. And so your inner being is never going to leave that vantage point. It's stuck there. It's never going to change. It's never going to leave that. So if your inner being doesn't move, the only thing I have capability in the work I do is to teach you how to change your mind. And with a little bit of work on any topic you give me, any topic, any topic, any topic, any topic, my work is to get your mind to overlap with how your inner being is. Because what I do as an intuitive is I can actually feel what your inner being has to say. I can actually put my hands through your inner being's eyes and tell you how they feel about whatever topic you've got. And that's one of the gifts that I received from studying this work for years, and oh my God, years and years of meditation yoga does crazy things to your mind, that being one of them. Crazy but also super fun. So when we start to take your mind and overlap with your inner being, then what happens is the fear actually starts to settle. And then you actually start to look at the life completely differently. So the other analogy I'm going to use, if this is the water ball, what learning these tools does is it starts to get you to shift it. Gets you to shift the thoughts a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time, and a little bit at a time. In an average weekend workshop, I teach about 20 different tools to get you to change, to learn how to shift your mind. Give or take 17, 20, 22 different tools. Depending on the workshop, I will take you through technique after technique after technique. I can do that in a weekend. And as you can see from the events, I'm going to start talking about them in a few minutes. In a 4-hour workshop, which is what I'm offering some of you guys as well, I can usually probably get across probably about 10, depending on how many questions I've got, 5, 10, 15 of the tools I can teach you. Because how I started this workshop was, I said to you, one of my transitions from family medicine to this work came from this point that if I can teach you how to do this, then you are not reliant on me. And that is my goal. My goal is to teach you how to literally be your own teacher. And when you become your own teacher, then you can overlap yourself more often. Does it happen like that? No. I've worked with clients for years and years and years, and the more often they do this, the easier it gets. But it takes a starting point. An average client will work with me for anywhere from a few weeks to a few months to even a few years, but it varies person to person to person. The ones who start with me just 1 or 2 times, I almost always see them back in 6 months or 2 years. And then they want more, and then sometimes they stick around longer. So depending on your commitment level to this work, you can either jump in and swim and go, whoa, I'm going to change my life, I'm going to make things better. Or you can put your foot in like you do in a pool and run away. And that's totally cool. If I can teach you a few things, you apply it to your life, that's when life starts to change. So like I said to you about 20 minutes ago, if I put a pause button on your life right now, what would your life look like in 6 months or 2 years or 5 years? You could tell me, right? I could tell you what my life would have looked like in 5 years if I didn't make any changes. And that wasn't a pretty picture. So I started doing some of this work. That's why you're here tonight, right? So T is the tools and techniques I teach people. I've already given you a couple examples tonight. And when you work with me in the future, I will teach you more and more. And a lot of times, a tool or a technique I will teach, especially if you come back to the webinar format, will be dependent on the questions that are asked, because then I can weave them in with the examples. And I'm going to jump to A, and then just in the mission of time, I'll start talking about how to take this work further. A is the aha. A is aha. This is what really life is. Life is meant to be easy. Life is meant to be free. Life is meant to be fun. I didn't learn that growing up, neither did I. But aha, I have a new life. Aha, there's a brand new escape for me. Aha, things can shift. So when you start to do this work, just incrementally, things change. So I'm going to tell you about my amazing offers that I've got for you, and I will keep these posted for about 7 days. Now, if they get really, really busy with people registering, I will have to close the page down possibly before 7 days, depending on number of registrants. So I'm going to go through the 3 different options. So I've given you 3 different ways that you can work with me further. Of course, you can hire me one-to-one. I didn't put that on the page, but that's an option. But these 3 ways are to work with me in a group setting. So the first option, which I have a feeling a lot of you guys would be interested in, is a 4-hour webinar format. I got an email or a text, I'm not sure what it was, when I was teaching the meditation from somebody asking for more details, so I'll explain them right now. So the 4-hour webinar format looks like this. Not this week, but the following week, I'll be teaching on 2 hours on the Monday and 2 hours on the Thursday. And the dates are right in front of you. I think it's the 22nd and 25th. And those 2 hours go from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on both days. During those 4 hours, I will teach you T after T after T after T after T. Tools, techniques, tools, techniques. And I'm going to actually intermix them with your questions. So when I teach a webinar format like this, you are more than welcome to email me in as many questions as you want. You can email me about your boss, Jim, who makes you anxious, and I will help you, because as an intuitive, I don't need to meet you. I know it sounds weird. I don't need to meet you. I just need your name, and I need Jim's name, and then I can help you to help you overlap that. That's what I do professionally. So I'll help you for 4 hours on that Monday and Thursday. You can come live, or you can watch the recordings. So you can either email me in questions, or you can text in questions if you come live, or call in with your questions live. So the 4-hour format will be recorded, and it will be live on those days. Now, if you have to miss an hour or 2 hours in the workshop, it is completely recorded. If you do register for it, you get the recording for life. So you do not need to be live. In fact, the last time I did a gut webinar that was kind of similar format, people would email me in questions, not watch live, but watch the recording later and go, oh gosh, right? Because I use the initial. If your name is Edith, I'm not going to use Edith. I would just say, hey E, this is your question. I'm going to read your question. I won't label your name, and I'll just say, E has a question, blah, blah, blah. E, this is what I've got to say to you. Got it? And that's how I teach those 4-hour webinars. So if you could email me in questions, call live, or text questions, then I can actually intermix the tools and techniques with your questions. If there aren't any, I can still teach, because as you can tell, almost an hour has gone by, no one's called in, no one's texted in, and I do pretty good. I'm a good talker. So you can join me for those 4 hours, and the price point's only $40, which is a steal, because to learn those tools and techniques is, oh my God, and literally you're going to get private intuitive readings if you are willing to call or text in. Now, I do have a limit as to how many clients can join that, so if I do hit that limit, I will be shutting it down. So if you're thinking of joining, please register soon. The link is right there. Register tonight. The link is right there, and you just pay it by PayPal, and then you'll get the link. You'll immediately get the confirmation that you've registered, and you'll also get the page to go to next Monday and next Thursday, and I'll be here live, maybe with the windows open, depending on the weather. So yeah, and if you register, I'd be excited to take this further. The other 2 ways to work with me are, I have 2 weekends left for this calendar year, and then I'm moving into one-day workshops. So if you've heard of my Mind, Body, Spirit weekends, or like, oh, I can't wait to do those, come, because I've only got 2 weekends left. Because I'm moving into a one-day format for many, many different reasons that I'm not going to share because of time. But I've got 2 weekends left. One is actually in Surrey, and it's next weekend. Father's Day weekend, but what a great gift for you and your dad, or your husband, or your lover, to come and get happy. And that's next weekend. Then the weekend of July 25th and 26th, you know the dates better than I do because you're in front of your computer. I have a workshop in Vancouver at Broadway and Ash. That's the location I rent, so if you're thinking location. So those 2 weekends, Mind, Body, Spirit weekends, are very much the most immersive healing weekends you'll ever do. You'll learn A to Z on everything about mind, body, spirit medicine. You'll learn the tools, you'll learn the techniques, learn all 20, 25 of them, but most importantly, you will apply them. in front of me for 2 days. And there's lots of time. I answer all the questions. We never run out of time. They're incredible events. I've had people come to my weekend workshops on multiple drugs and leave, and a few months later with the work, they are much, much better on less medications. I had the greatest testimonial the other day. I had a client who came in for her first kind of session, and I asked how she heard about me. And she said from a number of people. One of the people she heard about me had seen me for one-to-one, then she came back for a weekend, and she had a lot of depression, a lot of anxiety, and after a one-to-one and a weekend, it was like her whole life did a 180. Everything was different. Because what I do during a weekend is I put it all on a platter for you, and I teach you A to Z why your life is what it is, how to change it, and how to shift it. Maybe there's nothing going on with your health, but you want to shift your life. My workshops are not just about health, they're about your whole life. In fact, health is just a small component of it. In fact, what I always say is your body is the trickle-down effect of everything else in your life. So if you want to really go deep with me, come to a weekend. Now, those 2 dates, the price point is normally $3.99, and literally about, like I said, about an hour ago, I was on the computer going, oh, I got to do this back page, right? I'm like, what price point should I put it on for the people who join me? I closed my eyes, I meditated, turned to my inner being, and I said, do it for $2.99, Divi. You only have a couple weekends left before you move to one-day formats. It's your gift for people coming in on a beautiful sunny day and listening to you. So it's my last time I'll offer it for that cheap. And again, there's only a number of spaces left, so join me. I'd love to have you guys. If you need a payment plan on that, email me. I'll be happy to help you out. But literally, guys, this is the bag. I love teaching, if you can't already tell. It literally makes me fuel. I love tuning in. I love helping people. I love tuning into an audience of one person, 1,000, or a camera. I love tuning in when a bright light's in my face and I'm starting to sweat beads here. But one of the things that I'd love to do is to help people feel better. And if I never work with you again, I hope that you learned something tonight. But I have a very strong feeling if you've heard me speak tonight, our paths will cross again in one form or another. And maybe you will join me for my anxiety workshop. Maybe you'll join me for one of the weekends. One thing I should say is everything I do, I video record, I audio record for one reason, so that you can have access to it. You're not supposed to all get this in one sitting. The more often you hear it, the more you'll hear it on a deeper level. So I'm going to do a quick close, and then I hope to see you guys all, not this Monday, but next Monday. So my close goes like this. I love you all. It takes a special person to go to a website of a mind, body, spirit medicine doctor. It takes even a more special person to say, I've got a bit of anxiety, I want some help. And it takes a person who's ready to shift and transform and completely recreate their life to start this work. Once you do, va-voom, really, because it is incredible how much spirit loves you and wants to help you, and I'm literally the in-between so that I can help you through them. So I will see you guys next Monday, and if you have any questions, you can email me. Actually, before I sign off, I'm going to make sure there's no other questions, because a couple of questions came in on email, so just give me 1 second. I'll make sure you're not burning out a question here. Otherwise, I will see you guys next Monday or at one of my weekends. And I love you guys very much. Thank you, thank you, thank you for joining me. So I hope to see you guys soon. Have a lovely, lovely rest of your weekend. And enjoy the sun while we've got it. Ciao for now.